Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. Across southern Cameroun, the atmosphere grows heavier by the day. A nation in dispute where every new development raises the same uncomfortable questions about justice, dignity, and the long road to liberation. How long can a people endure power blackouts that last not just hours but months? What does it say when citizens must protect on bare ground, begging for electricity in a land blessed with waterfalls powerful enough to light an entire sub-region? And how does a territory so rich in natural resources remain trapped under systems that seem designed to extract rather than empower? Today and tonight, we look at a landscape where the tension centers overflow beyond capacity, where international laws meant to protect human dignity are routinely brushed aside, and where the cries of prisoners echo the broader cry of a nation struggling to breathe. We examine a political climate where calls for justice, whether from Europe or from the streets of Mutengene, are met with silence, dismissal, or defiance, where the word sovereignty is invoked selectively, often to resist scrutiny rather than uphold rights, and where every act of protest, every court ruling, every blocked road, and every silenced voice adds another chapter to a decades-long confrontation over identity, freedom, and legitimacy. So tonight we ask, what does liberation look like for a people living under perpetual tension? What future awaits a territory whose potential is undeniable, yet whose governance remains contested? And as the world watches, will southern Cameroons move closer to reclaiming its autonomy or deeper into the uncertainty created by decades of political and humanitarian crisis? Well, stay with us. The stories we bring you tonight shed light on these questions, piece by piece, as the struggle for justice and self-determination continues to unfold. Oh, well, these are the prime headlines on Undaunted tonight. Buea prison crisis. Overcrowding fuels inhumane abuse as international law violations mount. French Cameroun rejects the EU call for detainee release, citing sovereignty concerned. And in Mutengene, its residents protest months-long electricity power outage as anger grows over chronic power failures. Energy scandals in French Cameroun deepens hardship in Ambazonia that is already strained by war. And on the African scene, ICC sentences former Janjaweed commander Ali Kushab to 20 years in landmark Darfur war crime case. On the global scene, Honduras arrest warrant issued for ex-president Hernandez days after controversial United States release on pardon. And with that, we get into the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. Do stay tuned. The Buea Central Prison has descended into one of the worst detention crises in the Cameroun, with more than 2,000 inmates crammed into a facility that was built for just 700 persons. The extent of overcrowding has pushed the prison past its structural and human capacity, creating conditions that rights observers describe as cruel, degrading, and incompatible with basic human dignity. Under international law, notably Article 10 of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, the ICCPR, which French Cameroun has ratified, all persons deprived of their liberty must be treated with humanity and respect for the inherent dignity of the human person. The United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners, which is the Mandela Rules, further prohibits overcrowding, lack of sanitation, and any confinement that exposes detainees to conditions that may amount to torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment. Yet inside Buea prison, these prohibitions have become routine violations. We see that sources inside the facility report that prisoners now sleep in rotations of 6 hours, stacked against each other on filthy floors or makeshift boards. Hygiene is virtually non-existent. Disease spreads quickly, and access to clean water and proper bathing is a daily struggle. Block J, the ward meant for vulnerable, sick, and high-risk detainees, is among the worst affected. Designed to hold fewer than 100 persons, it now hosts more than 300 inmates, most with no bed space and limited ventilation. We see that amid the unbearable congestion and the absence of privacy, supervision, or psychological support, reports suggest an increase in same-sex activities among inmates, a practice which is illegal under French Cameroun's law. While the state criminalizes these acts, right advocates argue that the prison environment itself fuels behavior born out of desperation, trauma, and survival needs. The moral and psychological collapse taking place inside Buea prison mirrors what researchers have documented in other severely overcrowded detention centers worldwide. When humans are deprived of dignity, space, autonomy, and hope, the breakdown of social norms become almost inevitable. Rather than serving justice, the facility has become a breeding ground for corruption, exploitation, and predatory behavior, a direct consequence of a system unable or unwilling to meet international detention standards. Now, while Block J and other ordinary wards are suffocating under inhumane congestion, we hear that Block D, often referred to by inmates as the VVIP quarter, houses a capped population of 120, and it offers more space, cleaner surroundings, better ventilation, and even access to improved meals. This dual reality exposes a deeply entrenched inequality in the prison system, where status and influence determine the level of suffering or comfort, another indicator of systemic dysfunction. The unfolding crisis at Buea prison is widely seen as a reflection of the broader decay within French Cameroun's prison infrastructure. International human rights bodies have repeatedly flagged Yaoundé for failing to uphold the ICCPR, the Mandela Rules, and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, all of which obligate states to ensure humane detention conditions. Observers argue that the worsening state of detention in Buea, located in the heart of southern Cameroon, illustrates a governance model that has historically prioritized repression over reform, punishment over rehabilitation, and control over human dignity. For many southern Cameroons, Buea prison is not just a failing institution, it is a symbol of the deeper structural harm of continued union with French Cameroun. The argument made by pro-independence scholars and political voices is that a system that cannot guarantee the basic dignity of detainees cannot convincingly promise justice, equality, or protection for the people under its rule. They point to Buea prison's collapse as evidence of why Ambazonia needs total sovereignty to build institutions rooted in fairness, accountability, and humane treatment, rather than inherited from a state accused of chronic mismanagement and disregard for human rights, especially that of southern Cameroon. The crisis has therefore reignited calls for a complete decolonization, restoration of southern Cameroon's independence, and a justice system capable of treating every citizen with dignity, not one where survival depends on overcrowded floors, privilege, or proximity to power. Well, tonight on Undaunted Studio, we have with us our renowned guest, our legal mind, Barrister Team Mbeseha. Good evening, Barrister, and welcome to Undaunted.
Thank you for having us once more.
You're welcome, Barrister Mbeseha. And of course, you can see on your screen the Reverend Dr. Fred Lobati. It is an honor, sir, having you on Undaunted tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to participate in this program with you and Barrister Team. We trust it's going to be useful for our people. Thank you.
And with your input as well. Well, Barrister Mbeseha, you've heard the report. Would like to get your thoughts on this particular report, looking at the state of the Buea prison.
Well, what I know is that if there's anything Ambazonians must fight for, it is for the sake of what they call the West Cameroon prison system. In the West Cameroon government, the prison was not a thing for life or death. The prison was largely regarded as a reformatory. Where people went there, they came out reformed. And for that reason, earlier, the East Cameroon government, they decided to adopt the West Cameroon prison system. A prison where people suffer. Imprisonment is not death sentence. A prison where people, when they are generally speaking, you come out and watch before you went in. That is what, unless they've changed, I'm not sure. They adopted that system of the West Cameroon prison system. Today, I'm very sure, the highest training school for prison warders, the highest one in Cameroon is found in Buea. And for historical reasons, let me just outline what it was. The West Cameroon prison system was actually a productive prison. You could go to that Buea prison. There were two prisons in Buea. The upper farms. We're dealing with the lower farms now. The upper farms is completely closed, I think. Why? Because its function was to produce. We bought milk, you bought chicken, you bought all the red chicken, and then sold it out and made money for the prison services. But what happened in the 90s, late 80s and 90s? This from the East Cameroon. They came to the upper farms. I was in Buea there. They killed all the money. They all the chickens took the money. The upper prison closed. What they are left with is the central prison actually. And it is because in those days, it was not that overcrowded. Those who went there were even the privileged prisoners. You could go there officially, hire labor, pay the system, and they will give you the labor. They come and do whatever we were doing. If you needed carpenters, they are there. If you needed bricklayers, they are there. If you needed accountants, everybody was there. You could go there and get labor, pay officially, and they will give you a receipt. And what happened with this money at the end of the day, when you came out of prison, you were given part money to go life. You went back home, you didn't go back home empty-handed. But back to where we are. Now, this is was whole 700 people. It is only maybe not less than 5,000. Why? Why must these people suffer like this? Imprisonment is not a death penalty. Prison rights defended by the international legal system. You talk about the African Human Rights Group, the United Nations groups, to which the Cameroon is signatory. And once they become signatory to it, tensions and treaties, they are bound to treat their prisoners better than what they are doing. What are they doing there? Lying 20 on the, they don't even have a bed. It takes turns, 20 minutes and I get up. That is terrible abuse of human rights. Those people who are managing that type of system should be punished. The government of Cameroon that cannot provide for prisoners should be punished. Either way, they should be punished. They are violating those people's rights. A prisoner is not a dead man. And so they have the right to have a bed, a good meal. They have a right to be taken care of in the hospital. If they are sick, they actually had a dispensary there. But today that thing is closed. And so what you are saying is what we should not let go. Ambazonians, if only for the sake of even keeping prison normal, we should fight for that. Because our prisoners, before being prisoners, they are first and foremost our brothers, our sisters, our wives, our husbands. So why should they go through this sort of collective government punishment? Is it a punishment? Because from time to time, we're told, it is written down in documents, they have to visit the prisons. The judiciary, the state department, the state council, they have to visit the prisons to be sure the conditions are good. The churches have to visit the prisons to pray there with them. Priests, they have to do all that to be sure that the people are not just dumped there like cargo. They are not something definitely very, very. We should stop that because going to prison was not the normal. Many offenses that people go to prison they not even deserve to prison. And if you go to prison and find those out there looking for space, how have changed formally? Very few. They have developed a system where they can catch you on the road, send you to prison, and you remain there for years without any trial. No question asked. I think I remember just 2 weeks ago, we saw a case in Buea where the state council had gone to visit some detainees, not in Buea prison, but somewhere in the police or gendarme post. And they simply refused him. It was a madam, you don't have to visit these people here. And the magistrate, the well-trained magistrate, whose duty is to do that, was cowed to go back. We don't know what happened to the people who are there. Nobody is holding anyone accountable. So this is state crime. It is not negligence because the state has never provided the alternative. And so it's very, very lamentable. It's unfortunate. That is one of the reasons why we fight, or must fight. Because we're not trying to establish an Ambazonia only for the good ones. Our Ambazonia state tomorrow shall take care of the good and the bad, shall take care of its own citizens both ways. They are our citizens. We shall not send people to prison to go and die. We shall send them to prison to come out better citizens. Over to you.
All right, Barrister Mbeseha, very well said. And picking up from where you left off, you made very salient points. I'll ask this question now to you, Dr. Fred Lobati. Looking at the cruel and degrading treatment that Ambazonians in this Buea prison have to endure, do you think they meet a certain threshold that could strengthen Ambazonia's argument for international recognition of systemic violation against its own people? Barrister Dr. Fred Lobati.
Of course, thank you, Matt. I believe that the threshold had been met long time ago. Most of these, what we call prisoners, are innocent people. They have not truly committed any crime. They have not been taken to court and judged in an honest way and found guilty of having committed a crime and condemned to a certain duration of stay in prison, where we could be talking about maybe helping them to change their behaviors. These are mostly political criminals. What I mean is the government in place, La République du Cameroun, basically with their troops, they go out on the streets and they find predominantly males. They've been killing predominantly males. And when they find males that they feel threatened, may be the ones to stand up against the government, they pick them up for different reasons. which are unjustifiable. Maybe they stopped you and wanted you to show your identification card and you don't have one. They take you in. Maybe they ask you for money and you were not able to provide, or you seem to be asking why you had to provide the money as a bribe, and they take you in for different nebulous reasons. Most of those people there are totally innocent of any true crime. And the true criminals are out. In fact, the criminals are the one putting those innocent people in jail. I think that it's really unfortunate because most of these people that you see in there are young children, young boys. They are some of them are hardly 20 years old or just a little bit above 20, less than 30 years old. And they're struggling every day to find a living because the unemployment rate is extremely very high. They're looking for a way to make a living, try to go to school, live an honest life, and find themselves, unfortunately, in a situation where they are confronted by military, for example, picked up and locked up in jail, and they cannot understand why they're even there in the first place. And they stay there for years without being brought in front of a judge to be judged for whatever crime they were accused of. And many of the crimes are fabricated. If you hear the wording of what is called a crime, I mean, you shake your head and wonder where they came up with the phraseology, with the expression describing what they consider to be the crime of those innocent children. I find it very, very sad. These are mostly innocent boys who don't belong where you see them suffering. And I know that many times when I speak, I tend to go back to the French, and some people may wonder, why am I obsessed with the French? During the Second World War, many Francophone African countries who fought on behalf of France. And there were a large contingent of Senegalese troops in their thousands who fought for France. And when they came back and were asking for their retirement money or for some financial reimbursement for their work on behalf of the French, France did not want to give them anything and had them locked up in Senegal. And when they asked the French, they said, let them rot in jail. Mark those words, let them rot in jail. This was spoken by the French. That's what La République du Cameroun is doing. They literally repeat what the French do. There are other cases where you see Caucasian French in Ivory Coast and other places standing on the roads and extorting money as well from motorists and people passing by. So what I'm trying to say is that the practices of La République du Cameroun, whether it's the military and the government, is literally guided by the French. And so these people who are suffering in there, it's just the policy and the politics where the French want to keep the country under total control, as we've said in different programs here. And they're just basically humiliating and locking up people that they feel may be a threat if they would stand up as one. You notice that after the elections, recent elections, when the population came out en masse in the big cities, they overwhelmed the military. So if everybody would come out as one man in their millions, the military cannot do anything. But if they are docile and stay in their homes, they will pick individuals like this and lock them up, kill many. And many of these people die in very poor health conditions like you described. They contract all kinds of infections. They get tuberculosis, and then they die. They just take their bodies and throw somewhere. There were some images not too long ago where truckloads of dead prisoners were carried in Yaoundé to a place called Soa and just dumped into a hole and covered up. So it's a very sad situation. I trust and pray that one day, not too long, all of these innocent children all over La République du Cameroun who are locked up, not only Ambazonians, will be released and have their freedom. There's my small comment about that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fred Lobati. Well, we thank you for sharing the sad realities. And it is sad because we couldn't agree anymore here on Undaunted with the constant reports we bring to this newsroom on arbitrary arrest. And we never get updates on those arrests that those individuals have returned home. And that's how they end up here filling these prisons and living in deplorable conditions with no exact reason or cause why they're there. It is the sad realities Ambazonian face. And like you said, it indeed is more than enough proof that there is a violation of human rights going on and so much injustice in the southern Cameroons by the French Cameroon's institutions. But then we'll head into other parts of our reports today that still shows the impunity of French Cameroon. We see in our reports that the French Cameroon government has dismissed the European Union's call for the release of post-election detainees, labeling it an affront to the country's sovereignty. Communication Minister Rene Emmanuel Sadi stated that the EU's remarks are not just a breach of diplomatic protocol, but they are also disrespectful, meddlesome, and an affront to French Cameroon's national sovereignty. The EU's call for release comes after the death in custody of the prominent opposition leader Anissa Tekane, who was among approximately 2,000 civilians detained following the 2025 presidential election. Critics argue that the government's objection to protecting its citizens' rights falls short of French Cameroon's international human rights obligation. Observers have noted that French Cameroon's invocation of sovereignty appears contradictory given its significant economic dependence on external actors. The country's currency is printed and held in reserve by France, and economic reforms are often shaped by Western-backed institutions like the IMF. French Cameroon also relies heavily on international loans to fund national projects. This raises questions about the selective application of sovereignty. Should it only apply to internal treatment of citizens while the nation remains heavily dependent on foreign economic support? The international community is watching closely as French Cameroon navigates its relationship with foreign partners while addressing human rights concern. So looking at this report and seeing the one we just talked about, we cannot help but ask, Barrister Mbeseha, when French Cameroon rejects the EU's call to release post-election detainees on grounds of sovereignty, despite depending heavily on foreign economic support, international loans, and a currency controlled abroad by France, how legally credible is that claim of breach of sovereignty, especially in the context of its human rights obligation internationally? Barrister Mbeseha, let's hear the legal aspect of this, please.
Well, the mistake they are making, that the minister is making, is he thinks that there are some human rights that can violate within your own borders and go free. No, there's no such things. Human rights violations, what is protected under human rights is international, undocumented treaties that Cameroon has signed up to them, and even under the United Nations Charter and other related statutes. And so, for example, let us take about what they are talking now. Ekane who died, George Ekane who died, from which you're talking about that. It will not make any difference where he died in Yaoundé, where he died in Abidjan, where he died in London. It's a crime. You detain him and he died. And so that crime is a crime. It doesn't matter where it occurs. And so the minister is making a big mistake. But let us go back to where it's coming from. It's coming from the EU. What is the EU? The EU is a political and an economic union of 27 European countries, among them France. France is part of that group of nations around the world. And so we cannot just ignore that thing. If the EU wants to punish Cameroon for the violation of human rights, they can do it within hours if they want to. They can mobilize the political part of it by, for example, bringing up the matter before the Security Council of the United Nations. They will indict Cameroon. What would they do? They will recommend and send it to the ICC. The next day, all those people who are responsible for those things will be investigated, will be sent to jail. So if Mr. Minister there, if he has something there, he too will go to jail. You don't come out and say because I was a government spokesman. No, there's no political officer you hold that would let you go out of the law. I think a few days ago I mentioned this very thing. If the ICC could indict Mr. Putin, the second most powerful person in the world, they can indict Paul Biya even in his grave. And so that nonsense of telling people that they have sovereignty over crimes is irrelevant. But let us go back to what the EU was calling them to do. The EU is calling them to release detainees because there are lots of people who are in limbo. We're talking about the Buea prison. That's a different story. There are people who were called like George Ikane, where they ended up somewhere in the brigade or whatever police station somewhere. They were neither in prison, no free people. And so they keep these people, and the EU says detainees released after the presidential elections. Many have died, you cannot even account for. We hear about Ikane because he was a popular figure, he's a star. But others have died, others have been injured. People will come from there blind. What is the pleasure in keeping people detained after an election? What's the goal? What crime they committed in the first place? The only crime they have committed is that they believe that somebody else won the election. They had a different belief from those in power. And because you don't believe that what government is saying, you become a criminal. If they had caught Mr. Chiruma, he'll be in detention. What was his crime? The only crime he committed is that he won an election and says he won one. And then he keep this people, it's almost 2 months today when the election took place. He keep on detaining them. What is interesting is that the minister did not refute the story that they are detaining people. He only sought to say that we have the right to do it. Asking us to release our detainees is infringing our sovereignty. No, the minister is very, very wrong. I'm told, I don't know how far this is true, that minister is a diplomat. If he's a diplomat, he must be able to understand what is sovereignty. And so they are not above the law. No country, in fact, human rights violations are international. That's why you can take this into different human rights groups and will be fine. They will judge and fine with it. The most important one we should know is the ICC, because they don't just ask you to pay a penalty, they catch you and send you to jail. You actually go to jail and save time. And so that thing that the minister is saying is the EU, they can take this action to punish the criminals. They can decide right now, because the EU has in the bloc, their customs are free, they can punish Cameroon economically. They can even say no goods from Cameroon enter the European Union, which is 27 countries in Europe, including France. That will bind Cameroon, that will bind France. And so it is stupid to think that you can ignore what the EU is telling you, which is very, very unusual. But right that nation that they suggested that they should be released, even France, which is a powerful member of the EU, could not veto it. Did you hear them come out to say it's a lie? And so the minister is taking a big risk. He's deceiving himself. Cameroon is not out of the world. Once they sign up to the United Nations, it is written in the United Nations Charter, any country can be a member of the United Nations, provided that you respect all the articles of the Charter. And so once they have become part of the United Nations since 1968, in August or September, they are bound by those international treaties, by those international human rights regulations that have been adopted by other civilized nations. Over to you.
Yeah, very well said. Indeed, they are not above the law. Dr. Fred Lobati, adding to what Barrister Mbeseha said, it seems ministers like Rene Sadi is ignorant of the fact that they might be in charge of the nation, but they are not above the law, because he put this in a press release. So he must be either ignorant or trying to avoid the consequences of such actions. What do you think about this whole scenario playing out?
Okay, so no, he is not ignorant. He knows exactly what he's doing. They are just playing their local little, what they consider to be politics. Cameroon is not a sovereign nation. Before they got their independence in 1961, Ahidjo, the first president, had to sign several, I think like 15-point agreement with the French to have full control over that nation, which continues till today. And even in 2009, the current president, Paul Biya, signed a more detailed and more engaging military agreement with the French, and the French have full control of that country. When the Ambazonian crisis started, I don't know whether people can even remember, going right far back to around 2018, when things were hot, many people were being killed, and Le Drian, at the time was the foreign minister of France, came to Cameroon. This very René Sadi ran and picked him up at the airport and felt comforted, like his father has come to cover them. And France came and gave them comfort to continue what they have been doing to date. So no, they are not sovereign, number one. And no, he's not speaking out of ignorance. He's just pretending to be tough. You know, he's just giving the impression that they are tough. They are not tough. The issue here is that, you know, the EU is part of what we consider to be the international community. So the EU, the United Nations, the African Union, and all the different small subgroups like the Central African nations and the West African nations. And you notice that they all speak one voice and with a forked tongue. That means like you have hot potato in your mouth. You're saying one thing and doing something different. So again, remember that the EU has some strong nations there. Financially is Germany, and then verbally or communicatingly is France. The other ones are just members. So France tries to use the EU like a turtle uses its shell to say it's covered by a block of nations, and speaks a lot and portrays the image that is a very powerful nation. And in the military agreement in 2009 that the French signed with Buea concerning Cameroon, they said that France is free to use its partners in the EU to carry out military activities in Cameroon. And of course, it sounded like they were signing an agreement between two different states, but Cameroon would need to get permission in France to do anything in France. Cameroon cannot do the same thing in France that France can do in Cameroon, not to mention bring its EU partners. So the country is not sovereign. He knows that he's not a free man. If the French want to change the government, they will do so, if it is in their interest and will protect their control as they wanted. And some people believe that that's what's going on right now. They're secretly communicating with Chiroma in the background. And if they think that it's to their welfare and benefit to come out in the open and remove Buea and put Chiroma and continue controlling the country, they will do so. So I'm not impressed by that. La Republique has always been hypocritical. All their statements are hypocritical. They tell lies all the time. He knows what he's saying. And he knows that what he's saying is false.
Quite interesting, Dr. Fred. Quite interesting. More layers to this that we really haven't taken a look at. But then we'll have to get into more of the happenings on the home front with southern Cameroon. And we're taking a look at the town of Mutengene, which has erupted in protest on Tuesday today as residents, frustrated by long months of persistent power cuts, took to the streets demanding the restoration of electricity. According to local accounts, Eneo, the French Cameroon-controlled electricity provider, has repeatedly disconnected the area from the grid, leaving households and businesses in prolonged darkness. Eyewitnesses say the demonstrations began early in the morning, with residents rolling on the ground in symbolic displays of desperation and chanting for immediate reconnection. Community elders describe the situation as unbearable, noting that families have been forced to rely on unsafe alternative sources of light and energy for weeks. For many in southern Cameroon, the crisis has resurfaced long-standing grievances about governance and the management of public utilities since the region's incorporation into French Cameroon 64 years ago. Older residents recall a period when electricity in the area was supplied by PowerCam, a local power facility in Yoke that once provided cheap and stable energy across the territory. They say outages were so rare that families turned them into humorous events, a stark contrast to today's frequent and prolonged blackouts. The Ambazonia's landscape is abundant with natural resources, including dozens of waterfalls capable of generating significant hydroelectric power. Several of these water bodies scattered across the southern Cameroon remain untapped, despite their potential to not only meet local energy needs but significantly to boost regional tourism. Environmental specialists argue that with proper investments, some of these waterfalls in southern Cameroon could generate enough electricity to support even parts of West Africa. Residents who spoke to local reporters say the frustration runs deeper than just a blackout. To them, the electricity blockade symbolizes a broader pattern of infrastructure neglect in southern Cameroon on the French Cameroon's administration. They argue that despite the region's rich natural endowment, fertile soil, forest reserves, mineral deposits, rivers, lakes, and dramatic landscapes, little has been done to sustainably develop these assets or reinvest revenue locally. Political observers note that this sentiment feeds into the ongoing debate about the sovereignty. Many southern Cameroons believe that the nation's untapped economic potential explains why French Cameroon has been reluctant to relinquish administrative control, even as the conflict has escalated. The deployment of large numbers of soldiers to the area has further fueled perceptions that the state's interest is tied to resource preservation rather than equitable development. Mutengene protest is therefore being interpreted by local commentators not only as a demand for electricity, but as a call for dignity, development, and the right to benefit from the region's abundant natural wealth. Now, as the blackout persists, residents await an official response from NEO and clarity on when the power supply will be restored. But then we still have another concern of energy. While we look at this one happening in Mutengene, there is new allegations of massive personal enrichment involving French Cameroon's Minister of Water and Energy, Gaston Elundu Esomba. They're fueling public anger. Frustration is rising across the Ambazonia, where millions of citizens living on the ward continue to face worsening blackouts, failing water systems, and a government that appears more focused on private wealth than on basic services or civilian protection. The French Cameroon government. Critics say the colonial minister has accumulated private wealth through energy sector deals, while essential infrastructure, including electricity transmission lines, remain deliberately neglected, and it is leaving households and businesses trapped in this endless cycle of power failures in Ambazonia. The controversy surrounding French Cameroon's Minister of Water and Energy, Gaston Elundu Esomba, was exposed due to accusations by insiders of quietly benefiting from major energy sector deals. According to sector sources, the colonial minister allegedly profited from commissions tied to the sales of NEO and contracts linked to hydroelectric and water projects. Meanwhile, large personal ventures linked to his family, including a private university near Mfu and a hotel project in Kribi, continue to rise. The lifestyle contrast is striking for communities that have spent nearly a decade under colonial military operations, economic suffocation, and infrastructure collapse. The situation is worsened by revelations that French Cameroon pays close to 10 billion francs CFA annually to EDF for unused power from the Nachtigal Dam. Despite all the money swindled from southern Cameroonians, the electricity cannot reach citizens because these colonial authorities failed to construct the necessary transmission lines. A fundamental step that was simply ignored despite the full cost being absorbed by taxpayers, of course. Nowhere are the consequences more visible than in the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. While top officials expand private estates at home and abroad, residents in the war-hit southern Cameroons endure chronic blackouts, forcing families to live in darkness, non-functional water systems, leaving entire neighborhoods reliant on streams, paralyzed businesses as shops, cold stores and workshop lose equipment to power surges. Hospital unable to run essential machines, even during medical emergencies, and students preparing for exams without reliable electricity despite years of promises. Civil society actors note that while billions vanish into questionable contracts, Ambazonians continue to struggle for essentials that should never be political bargaining chips. For many, the scandal around the energy sector is not just a financial issue, but another reminder that the suffering of ordinary people has never been a priority where power and profit meet. Well, over to you again, Barrister Mbeseha. We're seeing this somehow links. Well, if this scandal on siphoning, which is not news with French Cameroon ministers, is happening, and we also see that Ambazonia is perpetually out of power, what is the correlation between these two stories, and what can you make out of this, Barrister Mbeseha?
Well, I think what is going on in Ambazonia, let us start with electricity. People are protesting for electricity. They are in Mutengene. I mentioned what Powercam. Powercam was based in Moyuka, in Yoke. That's about 25 miles from there, about 85 kilometers. They killed it. They claimed that they were bringing electricity from Medea, and they have not successfully supplied the people what they needed. Why should the people go through this? People cannot come to the streets, lying down to rub themselves symbolically on the ground, to protest for something that they will use and pay for. Electricity is not given to you for free. And in that place, that part of Mutengene, you'll be surprised to hear that they have not had electricity for months, but you continue to pay bills. The bills continue to come. Is it a mistake? No. Is it deliberate? I think so. As a side story to that story of Mutengene, the very yesterday or today, there was a similar demonstration somewhere in Buea. They call it Governor Street, around Moleko, opposite the stadium. The people there have not had electricity for months. They protested, and then they purportedly brought a transformer, which is installed there. It blew up within 48 hours. Was it a new transformer? No. It was something they picked somewhere to come and satisfy them. Why would they install a wrong transformer that will blow off in a few hours when it is made functional? It is simply because they want to punish the people. But in the larger context of things, with the Ministry of Energy, that minister and whoever, we must understand that the country has been auctioned. If you are a minister of anything, that's your own part of the country. You can do what you like there. You auction what you want. You make the money that you can and work free. It is not only the Minister of Energy and Power and water, whatever they call it. You find the Minister of Roads. There are no roads anywhere, but they have the best houses everywhere. You find the Ministry of Education. There are no good schools anywhere. There are no books. There's nothing called a school, but they have the best schools privately built for themselves. And so that's how the country has become. They've auctioned everything. If you're a minister, that's why they fight to become ministers, because you have a budget to run. If you're not a minister, you are made a powerful director who will take all the money, use it the way he and the president want to use it. Have we forgotten the story of the SNH, National Hydrocarbons, which is supposed to deal with all the gas and petrol that is shipped from the country? Officially, the account is not sent to anybody other than the president. It is all best known to the president and the Director General of the SNH, who is so old and sick. He has been living in France for the past 6 months to 1 year, and his wife is the one acting in that place. They give you what they want. They give Paul Bia's children. They give his uncles. They do what they want to do with the money. And so this is what a reason why we think that we should not belong to this system. Why does somebody in Mutengene need to go after electricity from Medea? If they say they want to give electricity from Medea, why is it not in Mutengene? If they say they want to give electricity from Medea, why is it not in Mutengene? If they say they want to give electricity from Medea, why is it not in Mutengene? If they say they don't want, if they say they want to give electricity from Medea, why is it not in Mutengene? If they say they want to give electricity from Medea, why is it not in Mutengene? How far is it there from Douala? Why is the same problem not being faced in Bafoussam, where they're having the same the rest of life there? Why is it not being faced in Kongsamba? Why Mutengene? The reason is simply that it is because that is Ambazonia. They want to bleed us to death. They want to show us that they are the masters of everything. But above all, when these people are demonstrating, they are lying out in the streets. What comes next? You find somebody who will come from his small office there. He is separate, does not even have electricity. He calls himself the Dio. He was the first man to arrive there. I started convincing people why before their complaint. That was not enough. His boss drove from Limbe and came and joined them, making the same promises they have made for the past 8 months or more than a year, and electricity has never come. What does it tell us? We find that the Dio, for example, who was trying to appease the people in Mutengene, is a Bulu Betty guy. His boss from Limbe coming to tell him to prefer himself is a Bulu Betty guy. Their main boss in Buea, the governor, is a Bulu Betty guy. So they have privatized the country to this tribe or to this ethnic group, and then they can manage it the way they want. There are no consequences of mismanagement. There are no consequences of anything. The same with the Gaston Elundu you have just mentioned, in charge of energy and whatever. He is a Bulu Betty guy. So what should we go through all this? Ambazonia was not meant to be sold, to be auctioned to the Bulu crown. Talk less of being auctioned to the Francophones. We've said no to this, and no, and no, and no. Our people in Mutengene, be it in Dub, be it in Akwaya, did not get independence to go through this hardship. Irregularly imposed hardship. Where on earth, in any civilized country, does the government, not a private organization, undertake to give electricity, to give people water? What type of government is that? These things should belong to a private company. We should encourage you to use their product and pay. You don't need to go and beg from someone to give you something that you pay a price for it. They are begging to go to prison. They are begging to punish yourself. And so that is what we are fighting against. We have to fight until we get out of this balok, because I can call this real balok as you call it. We don't know why the Lord punished us to this extent. And so we must fight until we get out of it. The question of electricity is just symbolic. The question of water is symbolic. Overall, we have been mortgaged to the Republic of Cameroon, and by consequence to France and their allies. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Barrister Mbeseha. Dr. Lobati, I believe you want to add something to that.
Yeah, there's a lot that one can say here. First of all, it's a political weapon that the government is using. When the people don't have energy, they cannot listen to this program, for example. They cannot access not only the internet or charge and use their phones or social media. So it's another way of indirectly controlling the population. But besides that, the government is serving the interest of the worldwide powers that want to keep the third world countries poor. I've said a lot of things right there. There are some individuals on planet Earth that have determined and made their minds up to keep third world countries poor. And they use puppets, like the dictators like Buea in this case, and their ministers to keep the country in abject poverty. They actually have pleasure in doing that. They want them to remain poor. That's why the infrastructures are abandoned, like you're talking about energy. Africa is rich. We have, besides the sun that is out there, we don't have snow or winter or cold weather or times when we don't have the sun. We have the sun every day. You can use solar energy. You have the wind that we can also use. We can tap so many other different natural resources or means of providing or getting energy besides converting our water falls into electric energy. And we can even go into nuclear energy where we use nuclear power plants like they do in Europe and other parts of the world to generate energy. We have all the energy that is available. But those infrastructures have been neglected. The government is used high-handedly to oppress any private initiative. So if people come with good ideas how they can provide energy for the people, they'll say you have to get government permission. And then the government will kill the project. They take bribes from you and destroy it and make it not happen. Basically fulfilling the agenda of those guys that want to keep us poor. And the situation is that as long as the government is serving the interest of those international individuals that want to keep us poor, they keep that government in place, which is why Buea remains. That means that he has sold the country to the French and others, and he's doing exactly what they want. And so that's why when he steals elections, they pretend, they either say nothing, or they say we congratulated him for his inauguration, and say we did not congratulate him for winning an election, and that they work with those who are in control of a country. That's the diplomacy of the individual other countries, as they say. So they say as of now he's controlling the country. What they're looking for other ways to make sure that when he is going naturally, either by death or otherwise, that they find individuals that will continue the same things that they have been doing since we got our independence. That means keep us in abject poverty and suffering while they exploit our resources. That's basically what's going on. It's a government policy. Roads are abandoned, energy, electricity, water, every project, even education is compromised. People, you've seen the fraud of this election. People are getting PhDs by writing a thesis on democratic practices within the CPDM party of Paul Biya. How is that thesis going to help the population in developmental, in their needs, whether it's a road or getting rid of refuse and dirt accumulated in the cities and the town? You find people writing PhDs on the First Lady's benevolent activities in helping the poor during Christmas by giving goods to some children in the hospital or leprosy. How is that going to help the country? It's not. Those are political degrees. And yet they will come back and say, oh, this person has a doctorate. This is Dr. This. But you see, basically they have compromised education, compromised so many different things, and it's an agenda to keep the country poor. And the French have said they want an Africa without the Africans. So the more they cause us suffer, the more they force our young people to abandon and leave because of joblessness and their level of suffering, go across the Sahara, picked up in Muslim nations around the Mediterranean and killed. If you've looked, you'll see. Go and suffer in Europe, go to Dubai and other places and their passports are taken away from them and they suffer. As long as they all abandon that place and leave, and they hope within the next 100 years die off, that they will come and then basically control the continent and the resources. That is the agenda that's going on. But that will not succeed. I don't want to take too long. That is not going to succeed. All those resources, all those opportunities will be harnessed, exploited, and the continent will flourish. That's just all I can say right now. I think I'll leave it right there.
And all you said is actually so much to learn from. Thank you, Dr. Lobati. But then we see that this Christmas, it is being celebrated in a rare and different way. We see that the Health Social Services and Women Commission in collaboration with the ABC Networks 24 celebrates Christmas this year. And on Saturday, we would be having a fundraiser, which is a very important day with regards to the celebrating Christmas this year, as well as a Sunday carol that is also following this fundraiser of Saturday. So it promises to be amazing. But before I even talk about this, let's take a listen to Dr. Patience Biedu as she gives us more details on that. And after which we'll get back to you. Thank you for staying with us until this time. Let's take a listen.
Greetings, fellow Southern Cameroonians, fellow Ambazonians. This is my Patience Biedu. Today is Tuesday, December 9th, 2025. Hey, I'm going to make this short video to invite you to two important events. On the 13th of December, this is coming Saturday, ABC Amba Network 24 and Health, Social and Women's Commission are jointly conducting a fundraising drive to benefit our communication network and also victims of war in Ambazonia. Please, be sure to come on that day, which will be on Zoom, and Mbeseha will be leading the way to make sure that we carry this event successfully. And then on Sunday, the 14th of December, we'll have an annual Christmas celebration. During that day, we intend to sing Christmas carols, learn about the birth of Christ, the tradition that we've done in the past several years. So please come ready to celebrate with us. In conclusion, this is a time of the year for us to give. We should realize that even though we may not be doing as well as others, we are doing better than most people. So come, be generous. Nothing is too small, nothing is too big. And one more thing, remember ABC has it's a 501c. So those of us residing in the United States of America, we can benefit with tax write-off when we donate bigly. So please come, be generous, and looking forward to seeing you this weekend. Thank you so much.
All right, we've heard it from Dr. Patience Abedu. Barrister team, tell us what you know about this upcoming event. Would like to hear from you. Barrister team Mbeseha, I believe you're still with us.
Well, all I know is that there's only one Christmas in 12 calendar months. Only one. And what I also know and believe is that Ambazonia is by large a Christian community, or largely Christian. There are Muslims and others there, but in majority we're Christians. So all of us honor Christmas. And Christmas is a time that everybody goes out to have some fun. Everybody enjoys. Maybe you and me, maybe we're old, don't want to go and drink. But children like to play around. They play with toys. They do all those things that make them happy. And there's nothing short of trying to make those children happy. Yes, we have lost people in war during the year. We have lost our houses. But the child does not know what war is. The child does not even know what a house is. Wherever the mother sleeps, the child sleeps with the mother. And all what the child needs is some cover to protect himself, or some water to drink, some top, they call it in Cameroun there, to jump around and play. And so nothing is too small. We are all parents, or would be parents. We're all young, or we're elderly. And so the call at Christmas is a good call. It's a thing that everybody can give something, no matter how small it is. I remember when we were children, they say Christmas in the village, we'll be playing the whole night from one compound to the other. This mother will give us granules, the other one will give us anything, and then we dance the whole night. And so I think that call is proper. Let us do everything that is possible. Let us put our hands deeper, at least once in 12 months, to make people have some smile. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Over to you.
Mbeseha, Dr. Fred Lobati would like to hear your thoughts on this upcoming event as announced by Dr. Patience Abedu.
Yeah, so we would like to use this opportunity to thank our people who have been donating throughout the years regularly, faithfully, to keep not only ABC alive, but also support our people who are suffering because of the crisis in the Cameroons. Remember, it's a worldwide problem. So we want to thank everybody who has been contributing. Whatever you have been giving is appreciated. It's not very much the amount, but the willingness and the intention and the goodwill of giving. We also want to thank those who want to but don't have. There are some people who really want to, like retire. We have retired mothers and fathers who don't work, dependent on their children, who are not excited doing anything for Ambazonia. And if their children don't give them something, they don't have something to give. I know some of them who, when they get any little money, they save it and give to help. So we want to thank those who want to but don't have it. And we trust that as time goes on, God will open the opportunity and give you what you want to give so you can also support. We also want to appeal to the people who watch this program, who enjoy this program. Even if you're in the home front, find a way to reach out and give whatever you have to keep everything alive, as well as to support each other. And I would also appeal to us that we are each other's keeper. You know, they are against us. They're trying to kill us. They're trying to do everything against us. Let us take care of each other. So if you have, like the Bible would say, if you have two coats, give one to another, to somebody who needs, and use the other one. So let us take care of us. Let's watch out in our communities where we live, even if it is in the diaspora, like where you saw Mape over there, or it's back at home where the suffering level is very high. If you see anybody in need and you can meet that need, reach out and help them. But above all, I'm appealing also that we should reach out and specifically help ABC stay functional, well taken care of, because it's our voice to inform not only ourselves but the world about our plight. The La Republique can only tell lies about us. The international community, the big media like CNN and the others, will say nothing because they're serving the interest of those guys that want to keep us in abject poverty. But with our programs like this, we can pass on the truth about our situation, not only reminding ourselves, but also to the rest of the world who can listen. And we need to be strong to have more audience. So I'm appealing that more people should consider giving and do so joyfully. And I pray that whatever you give, you will get it back. It will be multiplied even 100-fold than you gave. That's my little take on that. Thank you very much. And thank everybody who has been working very hard to keep ABC functional. Everybody who is doing whatever they are doing, like Star Smart is doing, or like Barrister Mbeseha talks all the time. We want to thank everybody who is sacrificing in different ways to keep everything functional. That's what I would say. Thank you very much.
Okay. I believe you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Fred Lobati, for your input, and of course, Barrister Mbeseha, for your wonderful input in today's Undaunted, and especially for this last bit of our announcement. We want to say thank you for joining in on tonight, but for now, we'll head on to the African news. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
On the African scene, we see that the International Criminal Court, the ICC, has handed down a historic 20-year prison sentence to Sudanese militia commander Ali Mohammed Ali Abd al-Rahman, widely known as Ali Kushaib, marking the court's first judgment related to atrocities committed during the Darfur conflict. We'll go on a quick break, and then when we're back, we'll bring to you the rest of the reports.
Sovereign silhouette, the emblem of Ambazonia. From the azure embrace of the Atlantic reflecting from the Ambas Bay, the iconic Fako mountain ascends with a silent, stoic grace, carving a silhouette against the sky. This towering sentinel is more than a geographical marvel. It is the heart of southern Cameroons, the stoic guardian of Ambazonia, a symbol steadfast as the unyielding spirit manifests in the unity of the land's 13 counties.
And back with the African reports, we see that Kushib, who is now 76, he was convicted in October on 27 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity for his role in a series of brutal attacks carried out across Darfur in 2003 and 2004. As a senior leader of the Janjaweed, a government-backed militia, he was found responsible for orchestrating village burnings, mass killings, and widespread sexual violence that contributed to the deaths of hundreds of thousands and displaced millions. In delivering the sentence, ICC judges underscored the severity of the crimes and Kushib's central role in planning and directing the violence. Witnesses recounted harrowing scenes, families fleeing burning homes, civilians executed in the open, and women and girls subjected to systematic sexual assault. Many described Kushib as a commanding presence who personally supervised attacks and terrorized communities. For many survivors, the verdict is a long-awaited step towards justice. Although the ICC issued arrest warrants years ago, Kushib evaded capture until he surrendered in 2020, a moment that rekindled hope among Darfuris that the crimes of the early 2000s would not remain unpunished. The Darfur conflict erupted in 2003 when rebel groups accused Sudan's government of marginalizing non-Arab communities. The government's response, carried out in coordination with the Janjaweed, evolved into what the United Nations later described as a campaign of ethnic cleansing. Now, while instability continues to plague parts of Darfur, Thursday's sentencing stands as a symbolic breakthrough in the long pursuit of accountability. Several ICC warrants related to the conflict remains outstanding, including against former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, with Kushib's conviction. The ICC has taken a significant step towards addressing one of the deadliest humanitarian crises of the 21st century. Now in Tanzania, we see that Dar es Salaam was turned into a fortified city on Tuesday as police and soldiers fan out across major streets, bus stops and public squares to stop protests planned by activists demanding accountability for the deadly crackdown that followed Tanzania's October 29th elections. The vote triggered the worst political violence in the country's post-independence history, with UN estimates suggesting hundreds of people were killed as security forces battled demonstrators disputing the election outcome. For a nation that was once praised as a stable democracy in East Africa, the violent aftermath and now the sweeping security lockdown reflect a deeper erosion of civic freedoms that observers say has been years in the making. Authorities insisted the deployment was necessary to maintain peace, But the scenes unfolding on Tuesday told a different story, a government increasingly reliant on force to manage dissent and citizens determined to draw global attention to what they have called a national tragedy. Rights groups argue that the military-style presence in the commercial capital is symbolic of a leadership unwilling to confront allegations of electoral malpractice, preferring instead to silence this content through intimidation. Analysts warn that Tanzania's credibility as a democratic state is now under unprecedented strain. What was once viewed as an outlier of political calm in the region is rapidly slipping into a pattern seen elsewhere on the continent, where contested elections, restricted speech, and heavy-handed policing fuel deeper instability. The outcome of this protest, whether crushed or allowed to breathe, may shape how far Tanzania drifts from the democratic ideals it once promised. Now on to the global news. On the global scene, Honduras Attorney General has issued a new arrest warrant for former President Juan Orlando Hernandez, just days after he walked out of a United States federal prison following a pardon granted by former United States President Donald Trump. Hernandez had been serving a lengthy sentence for drug trafficking and related crimes after the United States prosecutors accused him of working with cartels to route cocaine into American cities. His sudden release last week stunned many in Honduras, where his presidency remains associated with corruption scandals, political turmoil, and widespread public distrust. Attorney General Joel Zelaya said the new warrant concerns ongoing domestic investigations, including allegations of money laundering, criminal conspiracy, and abuse of public office during Hernandez's 8 years in power. The timing of the warrant immediately after his return reflects Honduras' attempt to assert judicial independence at a moment when many feared the United States pardon would insulate him from accountability. Legal experts say the move signals a critical test for Honduras institutions after years of accusations that the country's justice system was either influenced or intimidated by political power. Pursuing charges against the former president represents both a risk and a statement that Honduras wants to reclaim its credibility in the fight against corruption. Yet the decision may heighten political tensions as Hernandez still commands pockets of influence, making his arrest both legally significant and politically explosive. Away from that and on to Israel, we see Israeli authorities on Tuesday raiding the East Jerusalem compound of UNRWA, the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, removed the United Nations flag and replaced it with Israel's national flag, an act condemned by the UNRWA head Philippi Lazzarini, who said that the move violated established protections over UN property. The incident comes against a backdrop of escalating tensions between Israel and the United Nations agency, which Israel accuses of harboring or enabling elements linked to militant groups, claims the UNRWA denies. Yet analysts say Israel's decision to lower the UN flag is more than an act of confrontation, that it reflects a strategic and symbolic assertion of sovereignty over East Jerusalem, a territory the international community considers occupied, but which Israel claims in its entirety as its undivided capital. From Israel's perspective, UNRWA represents an institution that preserves Palestinian refugee identity and international oversight in an area where Israel seeks uncontested authority. The flag replacement, while diplomatically provocative, signals Israel's determination to limit the political influence of bodies it believes challenge its control of Jerusalem. Security officials have also argued, often without sharing detailed evidence, that hostile actors exploit the UNRWA's presence, reinforcing the government's view that the agency's autonomy on Israel-claimed land is a security vulnerability. Now, while critics call the raid a clear attempt to intimidate the United Nations, the action sheds light on Israel's broader strategy, reshaping the institutional landscape of East Jerusalem in a way that reduces foreign influence and strengthens its territorial narrative. The confrontation over a flag is thus less about symbolism alone and more about the long-running struggle over legitimacy, identity, and authority in one of the region's most contested spaces. And with this, we've come to the end of tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at our major highlights. On Undaunted tonight, we brought to you Buea prison crisis, the overcrowding that fuels inhumane abuse as international law violations mount. We saw French Cameroun rejecting the EU call for detainee release, citing its sovereignty concerns. Mutengene residents protest months-long electricity blockade as anger grows over chronic power failures. Energy scandals in French Cameroun deepen hardship in Ambazonia, already strangled by war. And on the African scene, ICC sentences former Janjaweed commander Ali Kashaib to 20 years in landmark Darfur war crimes case. And on the rest of the globe, we saw Honduras arrest warrant issued for ex-president Hernandez days after controversial United States pardon. And with that, we've come to the end of tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. On behalf of the entire Undaunted, we say thank you for tuning in. We'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.